This is Michaela and Emily's GVT project. Our country is Mexico. Congratulations! You have been chosen to teach in Mexico for 3 months next month. Here is a virtual tour of the country you will be teaching at, as well as some helpful tips so you can teach with culturally responsive techniques. Nonverbal communication. In Mexican culture, nonverbal communication is generally expressive. I will explain each subcategory and relate it to Mexico. There is proxemics, territoriality, kinesics, chronemics, paralanguage, haptics, and silence. For proxemics, in Mexico, people generally stand closer together than people in America do. Maintaining space comes off as unfriendly. For territoriality, physical interaction in Mexico when speaking with one another is normal. Kinesics. There is the use of a lot of arm gestures, hand gestures, eye contact, and nodding when speaking to one another while in Mexico. People are very expressive. For chronemics, people do not give direct refusals and typically try to avoid conflict and confrontation. Paralanguage. In Mexico, people talk louder in group settings, and it is seen as okay to disrupt the speaker. For haptics, there are often displays of affection which are normal within the culture. The use of nudging arms when trying to reinforce points in a discussion and shaking hands firmly, especially between men, is normal. For silence, the use of silence is not common during discussions unless there is conflict being avoided. There are usually multiple conversations happening at the same time, and interrupting is normal. The similarities between American culture and Mexican culture in nonverbal communication are that in America, physical interaction, gesture, and eye contact are also done in nonverbal communication. Americans also dislike silence like in Mexico. Differences are that Americans do not stand as close together, and interrupting is seen as rude in America. Volume of voices are also different in Mexico, and it is normal to speak louder. In America, the normal volume is not as loud. While teaching in Mexico, there are some do's and don'ts when it comes to nonverbal communication. Do, while in the classroom, be expressive. Use hand gestures, eye contact, etc. when teaching because students will engage better. Do show open displays of affection to students by nudging their arm, etc. While in the classroom, don't maintain space when communicating one-on-one with students or parents because this comes off as rude. Don't confront students in front of other classmates. Their culture does not do this and the students are not used to it. Gender differences. In Mexican culture, gender differences look different than in America. I will explain each subcategory. There is status of different genders, family units, and gender expression. Status of different genders. Mexico has a patriarchal culture, meaning that men have more authority than women. So men communicate with more authority and take initiative more. You might see that with your students. Boys could be more self-reliant, while girls may be self-denying. Family units. Family is one of the biggest aspects in life in Mexico. Individuals are expected to put the family before themselves. It is expected that students might put family before studies, so make sure to be sensitive to that. Gender expression. There is a very high social stigma against homosexuality. Same-sex marriage is legal, but not encouraged. You won't see as many students open about their sexuality, and this might influence the way students who are homosexual are treated. Like, for example, they could be getting bullied. The similarities between American culture and Mexican culture and gender differences are that in both Mexico and America, family is important, although family is higher valued in Mexico. The differences are that in America, gender rules are not so divided and homosexuality is more accepted. While teaching in Mexico, there are some do's and don'ts when it comes to gender differences. Do, in the classroom, encourage girls to take initiative because their culture tells them otherwise. Do, be sensitive to the importance of family to students. Don't Put any students down for their sexuality because they could be getting bullied by other students since it is not accepted. Don't make them feel bad or punish them for putting their family before studies because this is highly important to their culture and they have been taught this all their lives.
About the cultural dimensions, which are Hofstede's dimensions and value orientation theory. So these are the 6 different dimensions, and next to them I have included the score that Mexico has in all of those areas. So the first one is power distance. It is a society that relies on hierarchy. Everyone has a place, and there is no need for justification. People are expected to do what they are told. They are collectivist culture. Their commitment is to their group or their family units, whereas the U.S. is an individualistic culture. It is a masculine culture, competitive society, and is performance-based. People value their work, which is very similar to the United States. They have a very high preference for avoiding the uncertain. There is need for security, rules, preciseness, and the expectation to stay busy, which is nothing like the U.S. It's kind of the opposite. They are short-term oriented culture. They do not look ahead for the future and focus on getting results in the present. And they are a very indulgent culture. Leisure time is strongly valued within society, and they find it very important, which is very different from the U.S. For value orientation theory, there are 5 different domains. The first one is human nature. It's similar to the U.S., has the belief that everyone can be either good or bad, but is influenced by life circumstances. They want mastery of the natural world because they have such a strong uncertainty avoidance, which causes them to want to have control over external circumstances. Time, they are rooted in tradition, and their outlook is to preserve tradition rather than to change, where the U.S. is using tradition and adapting it when they see it fit. Activities, they are an indulgent society. They do what they enjoy, and in social relations, they view people as equals. Similarities and differences. Similarities is that they are both short-term oriented cultures and masculine cultures. Differences is that the U.S. is an individualistic society and a less indulgent culture. Do's. Implement routine and schedules into the classroom so that the student knows what to expect throughout their day, and give the students options for leisure time or free time, basically giving them a time where they get to choose the activity that they get to work on because that's something that is highly valued to them. Do not give vague instructions. They need to know what is expected, and when you're delivering content, do it one by one and focus on building up to the big idea, just because that's what they're used to. Religion. So over 80% of the population is Roman Catholic. The second largest is evangelical at 6%, and then after that it's really small percentages of a couple other religions. The dominant culture of Mexico is a blend between indigenous and Spanish culture, who colonized the country in the 16th century. Each region has their own unique cultural identity, which includes their own customs. So some dominant culture patterns that have been influenced by religion: human being nature. Each person is accountable for his or her actions in life that will be rewarded. No one is inherently bad or good. It depends on life circumstances, which I mentioned earlier. Activity orientation, private time devoted to spend with the Lord. Again, a very indulgent culture. Time orientation, tradition, and routine is very important. So they participate in a lot of things like the sacrament and the Eucharist, which connects back to being a very traditional culture. Relational orientation. The church stresses that each member shares each other's merits, revolves around community, much like the rest of Mexican culture does. A collectivist culture. Role of women, tend to hold more traditional views of what is expected within society from women. So some similarities about both countries is that they both value tradition. Differences is the way that they go about it. America looks to change tradition if they see fit. Mexico wants to preserve. Differences is that America has many more cultures. Do's include showing examples of women in society breaking traditional roles because they don't see that, and creating a community class environment because that's what they're used to. Do not be disrespectful about belief system. They're very rooted in tradition and practice. 2, do not make assumptions about customs and cultural celebrations as they are specific to different regions within Mexico. So yes, this is our presentation. Thank you for listening. I hope that you find this information very helpful.